Hey there everybody, my name is Kat Bowser. I'm your resident fantasy therapist. Welcome back to my channel. Those of you here for the first time, welcome. My name is Kat Bowser. I'm a licensed therapist. I'm also a writer working on my first two novels, one a standalone, one the start of a series. And on my channel I like to talk about what I consider to be the heart of writing. That's the characters. The heart of the characters is their psychology. So that's the angle I like to take with pretty much everything I talk about on my channel. Okay guys, so today, sorry I am a little late. I've been finding that my schedule has been funky. I blame work, I blame coronavirus, I blame everything for making my schedule just crazy. So I am still gonna do 2 videos a week, one at the beginning of the week, one at the end of the week. I'm gonna try to stick to the schedule I set, which is Sunday and Wednesdays, but I'm finding that depending on the week, it just varies so much. So, but you guys still will get 2 videos a week. So today I wanted to talk about setting. I've done a couple videos on setting before, but I wanted to actually do like kind of a countdown on settings. And these aren't necessarily settings that are my favorites, although those are certainly in here. But I wanted to talk about settings that for whatever reason stood out to me and why they stood out to me, because I think one of the best ways to work on settings in your stories to talk about, honestly, other stories that stood out to you. So those of you who've been on my channel a while know I tend to lean more towards animation than I do live action, but I do have a mix in here. So we have 15 of them, so I'm gonna just start at number 15 and make my way down to number 1. I would love to hear about your guys' favorite settings in the comments below, so if you are so inclined, leave me a comment and I will get back to you. All right, so number 15, I'm gonna take you guys back to the 1980s here, and that is Rainbow Land from Rainbow Bright, or more specifically, the place it was before it was Rainbow Land. When I was a kid, this setting scared the crap out of me. Granted, I was like 5 or 6, but it still scared me just because I don't think I ever realized before how much color adds to the atmosphere of a setting. And here we're in a place where there is no color, like except for the main characters, which have some color to them. The whole setting is gray, white, black, shadows. Even the water is like this grayish, yeah, it's kind of a grayish blackish color. It's not even blue, and it creates this sense of dreariness and hopelessness, and that's exactly the mood they were going for. And I just think color is something to consider with a setting, or lack of color. I do think you can do this with colors as well. I think it's generally easier to do it without, and that's why a lot of times in movies and stories and stuff, the bad guy, the evil people, it's black or it's red or whatever. But you can set mood with color. So that's the main thing I got from this setting, is just one, I remember how dreary it made me feel, how uncomfortable, how it really pushed me to want the heroes to succeed just because it was so uncomfortable to be in. And I think setting a mood is really important in a story, and you can definitely do it in a lot of different ways, but this is one way to do it. All right, number 14, Waterworld from the movie of the same name. I love the ocean. I have always found the ocean to be very interesting, especially as a setting, because I think we associate so much of setting with land, like we associate with trees, with mountains, with valleys, and all that stuff. So when you have a setting like this, where it's literally just people on rafts and boats on water, it creates a very, it gives you this sense of isolation, this not helplessness feeling necessarily, but just this sense of, look how small you are. Look how small you are in this vast land. And the thing I like is they don't necessarily make the water like threatening. Like, I mean, there's not like you know, huge megalodons trying to eat people or things like that. But it's more of, you know, we are so dependent on these rafts and these boats, and you know, there's a few floating cities, I believe, and you're just very dependent on them, and if those fail, there is this sense of, then what do I do? So that's why dry land is so sought after, and when they finally reach it, it's beautiful because it's this contrast between what we've seen before. So before, we literally just have rafts, boats, mechanics, and water, lots and lots of water. And what I like is that when they reach dry land, there's still water there, I believe, but it's a different kind of water. And so I think the contrast is really what plays very well here, is the contrast between this sense of isolation and then this sense of substance. That's my take on it. All right, number 13, The Land of Fantasia from The Neverending Story. I'm including both the book and the movie here. I think most people are more familiar with the movie, but I like this place because they really push this idea that it's born in imagination, that's literally what fuels it and what creates it. So you have all these odd creatures. They mention that I think Atreyu is from the land of the purple buffalo and things like that. And then you get areas like the swamps of sadness, and I mentioned that one because I'm pretty sure that's probably the landscape most people remember the most. And they really set, again, just kind of this mood with just how it's designed, and not only that, the effect it has on the characters. In the book, it's even worse because Atreyu's horse Artax can talk, and so the whole time that he ends up sinking into this swamp, he's essentially almost talking like with this suicidal mood, and it's creepy and saddening, but it's very creepy. And then of course you have what's the name, Moria, the Ancient One, who is a mountain that's a turtle shell, because why not? It's a fantasy land, and I like how you can take these areas that look like one thing and totally turn them into something else, and you totally buy it. And I think that's one reason I love fantasy so much, is it really does have this anything goes kind of vibe. The other thing I like is that when Atreyu goes to find the Southern Oracle, he has to pass through multiple gates to get there, and they really set up the mood with these different gates with weather. I mean, the second gate I think is covered in ice. It's a blizzard he has to fight through. The first gate is doused in yellows and oranges, and essentially this sense of fire and judgment. And then when he finally gets to the Southern Oracle, it's blue, but it's this cool, almost soothing color. And I think that really sets the difference in feel, and that he has gone through all these challenges, and now not only has he reached what he's been seeking, but it's giving him almost, I'd almost call it like a balm. Like, it's a soothing kind of feeling, like, okay, I've made it. I'm safe here. I don't have to worry. I can get what I need. So that's just the impact I got from it. Again, there's so much more in the book, but I kind of focused a lot on the movie because, again, I think that's what most people recognize. Next one, Thessan from The Savior's Champion, The Savior's Sister by Jenna Moresi. I didn't see a lot of this world in the first one. We're kind of in her first book, Savior's Champion. It's kind of more condensed, but I have started an ARC for her second book, so I'm not going to give you guys a lot of details, except that we do see more of the world. We do see more of this Greek influence, this Roman influence, and I don't see that used a lot in stories. Usually it's very much European influence, but in this one is very much a Greek-Roman vibe, and I think it serves the story really, really well. Kind of gives it its own unique flavor and makes the makes the characters, I think, more interesting because you get to see them in this setting that you don't see a lot in fiction. And so I appreciate that. I can't tell you guys, like I said, I can't give much on it because the book's not out yet, so I'm not going to do that. But suffice to say, I really enjoyed seeing more of this world. Right, number 11, The World of the Oncoming Storm series by Marion Blackwood. And I will link all the authors I mentioned that are indie authors below. So I have read 2 of the books. The 3rd one's coming out this month, and she just released the cover of the 4th one. So this world I really like because you have a city that feels very lived in. We see mainly the underground world of it, which I think is really fun because usually I think we're exposed to just kind of the outside world, you know, the world of like regular people. But then in this world, you get to see the world of the assassins, the world of the thieves, the world of the people who work in the love business, or as they say. And I like that a lot because really cities do have layers to them. There are definitely different levels, and as you go to each level, you're going to find different things. Like, I mean, even if you think of your own city, there is the viewpoint that the rest of the world sees. There's a viewpoint that someone who lives in like the suburbs sees, and then there's a viewpoint of someone that lives in like the inner city will see. And I don't see that explored much, and I like that because it makes the city feel more real. It gives it layers, it gives it steps and levels, and I appreciate that. All right, number 10, The Great Valley from the Land Before Time movies. So I'm only focusing on the first movie for this one, and the reason being, I really think they do a really good job of building up this place before you see it, because you don't get to see this thing until the very end of the movie. Like, I think it's like not even the last 5 minutes, maybe the last 3 minutes. But they start at the beginning, giving it kind of this mythical, legendary feel. They're talking about more water than you could ever drink, more food than you could ever eat. They talk about how all the dinosaur herds are heading there. And the trip there is hard. It's difficult. There's even situations where the characters get lost and don't necessarily know which way to go, and they aren't even sure if they're able to get there. So it has this legendary quest-like feel to it. And I think what really sets it is all that build up, and then you have the characters going through situations where you really wonder if they'll ever actually get there. Even though it's a kid's movie, you legit wonder if they'll ever actually get there, or if it's even really true. I mean, they bring that possibility up. Is it even real? Or is this just a story that people have been following? Is this a dream people are just chasing? And what that does is, at the very end, when they've given up all hope and they finally find it, this scene, I still say this is one of the most satisfying scenes I have ever seen in a movie. The animation, the music, just the overall, we finally made it kind of sense. That's why I love this setting. I think it loses a little of its vibe in the sequels simply because you're there all the time. So I think keeping it to a minimum here and having them not know if it's true, not know if they're chasing a dream or something that's actually real, I think that really adds to it, and it makes the ending, when they find it, oh so satisfying. All right, number 9, Flutter Valley from My Little Pony. When I was a kid, this was like my cartoon. This was my favorite cartoon. for a long time. And I've heard people refer to it now that I'm older. They said Flutter Valley was kind of the Rivendell of My Little Pony, and yeah, it kind of is. It's, you know, this hidden valley that not many people know how to get to. It's full of plants and flowers and supposedly peace. And they use so many colors in it. I mean, the show as a general rule has a lot of colors. There's a lot of pastels and things like that because, honestly, of the audience they were appealing to. But there's still this difference when you pass from, like, the outside lands into Flutter Valley. There is this shift in, not necessarily art style, but the edges are softer. There is almost a watercolor kind of feel to it, and it just gives it this almost otherworldly feeling. And again, this is one of those, I think, that kind of loses some of its vibe, I guess, because when they show it more. Like in the series, they show it, I think it's the focus of like a 10-part episode, which I do like, but it doesn't seem nearly as mythical or majestic in the TV series because you see it so much more. So there is something to less is more. At number 8, Wonderland from Alice in Wonderland. Again, Disney movie, live action movie, book. I really remember Wonderland from this live action TV special. And I think it was made, I'm pretty sure it was made in the 70s. Yeah, pretty sure it was made in the 70s. And the special effects are definitely aged, but it had this interesting, I don't know, there was something interesting about it.
Father, I'm here, look! I'm here, on the other side of the mirror! Mother, Father, help me, I'm here! Jabberwocky. 'Twas Brillig and the slithy toes, to gyre and gimble in the wabe. How mimsy were the Borgoves, and the mome-raths outgrabe. Beware the Jabberwock, my son, the jaws that bite, the claws that catch. Beware the Jubjub bird, and shun the frumious Bandersnatch. I can just tell this is supposed to be a scary poem. It's a good thing I'm grown up, or I probably would be a little frightened. Hunter doesn't frighten me, and I'm not the least bit afraid.
Wonderland, especially in the animated movie, it's like spot to spot to spot to spot. You know, you go from one spot to another spot to another spot and you explore it. And that's what happens here too. But I feel like it's more integrated. It feels like it still kind of loops together and it's still connected, but they're still separate too. So like there's definitely specific areas that are different, but they still feel like they kind of belong in the same place. I could also say Disney did a TV series, Alice's Adventures in Wonderland in the 90s, which does kind of the same thing where there's specific settings like the Mad Hatter's house, the palace, and things like that. but they still feel like they belong in the same area, even though they're wildly different. I mean, there is an area where you can go to the caterpillar and you're his size, and then you go to the palace and you're back to regular size. And it doesn't feel like it should match, but it does. And I'm still not entirely sure how they did that. But I think it's because each location has its distinctiveness, but there's things about each location that you can kind of see in the other locations too. So there's a pattern, but it's more, I would call it, each place has reflection of the other places rather than necessarily an ongoing theme, if that makes sense. But then it is Wonderland, so, you know. Right, number 7, 100 Acre Wood from Winnie the Pooh. I just think this place gives off this feeling of just welcomeness. Like there's areas in this wood that are uncomfortable. Like in Winnie the Pooh and Tigger 2, there's a scene where Rabbit gets lost. And when I was a kid, it used to scare me a lot. But at the same time, it was one of those feelings of, this is frightening, but it's not dangerous. And I think that is a really neat distinction to make, especially in kids media. Because making someone feel unsettled and unsure and slightly afraid is a lot different than making them feel like they're in danger. And I think that's the real distinction. Is I consider Winnie the Pooh more of an exploratory story than necessarily what you would call an adventure story, even though they do go on quote unquote adventures. But there's just this sense of safety throughout this whole wood, and I really like that. Even as an adult, I go back and I watch it again now, and it still has that welcoming vibe. It still has this sense of belonging that I really enjoy. Right, number 6, Scotland. Multiple movies, cartoons, animations, pick one. I just love the look of this place. I think the one that's most distinct to me is probably from Brave, because I really appreciate well animated landscapes, and I really think they did it well here. I just have a thing for nature, I think, and I live in Arizona, so we do have trees and stuff, but you gotta go up north to find them. So around my house, I have a lot of dry area, dirt, cacti, and it has its own beauty to it, but I miss greenery, and I miss flowing water, and I miss just this sense of, I think it just gives me a sense of like wanting to explore and see what you can do. That's really the vibe I get from whenever I see Scotland in movies or photos. I've never been there. I'd like to go at some point, so I don't know how accurate it is, but I do enjoy visiting. All right, number 5, Mount Paouz from Dragon Ball Z. I would love to have this as a backyard. Like, I really would. Again, I think this appeals to the side of me that likes nature and just this sense of openness and exploration. And I think this place in particular just gives off this serene feeling, like this sense of, this is where you can just be simplistic and have a simple life and be okay with that. And I like that. I think that's a sense of kind of returning to roots in a way. It gives me a sense of home, as I was born in the American South, and I don't know, it just gives me this sense of feeling like this is a place where I could raise children. This is a place where I could go exploring every day and always find something different. And I'm still not entirely sure how it does it. I think part of it is the isolation, but I think what it does well is there's a sense of isolation, but there's also this sense of connectedness, like not only to family that is there, but to the land itself. So like the land itself has almost this nostalgic feeling. And I got into Dragon Ball when I was in high school, so I don't necessarily consider it a nostalgic show for me, but it definitely creates that feeling in me. Right, number 4, Narnia from Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. And I am specifically talking about the first time Lucy enters Narnia. The book does a really good job, and so does the movie, it starts out with just a 6-year-old in a wardrobe pushing through these old-fashioned coats with fur and stuff on them. But as she starts to push through them, she gradually starts to feel branches instead of clothes. And then she emerges in this world with this pristine white snow, trees around her like pine trees, and then a single lamppost with a burning flame. And I just get chills every time I read it. But I really love how they did it in the movie. And interesting trivia here, when they actually did this scene, they prepared the entire set before they let the actress that played Lucy see it. So when she actually emerges into the set, it's the first time she's seen it. And they did that on purpose because they wanted her sense of awe to be real. And I really think it works well. I think so many times, and in this story, winter is generally referred to as, the season of the bad guy, the White Witch. But they also managed to make it look beautiful. And they talk about that there is also good things that come in winter, like Christmas. That's one of the things that they reintroduce. And it's not so much the presence of the holiday, it's this other feeling. Like when they meet Father Christmas, it's not that he's giving them gifts, it's more like he's giving them guidance, and he's giving them a sense of duty, responsibility. And I like that vibe. I like that what that sets up for the story and for the characters. And I also love Lucy's introduction to Mr. Tumnus. I'm probably saying his name wrong. It's been a long time since I read that book. There's this sense of awe from both of them. Like, she has this sense of awe because she's never seen a fawn before. And he's got a sense of awe because he's seen a human, as he calls her, a daughter of Eve. And so it's like you have equal awness on both sides, and I really think it plays out well. All right, number 3, New York City. This one, I think it really depends on the media you're watching. When I think of New York City, as I'm thinking of it, I'm thinking of like Oliver and Company, Gargoyles, because I think it captures that sense of tightness. It's compact. There's things always happening. There's so much color and noise and sound and designs, and it's all around you, and it's all encompassing, and it doesn't stop moving. I've never been to New York, but I have talked to some of my friends that have, and I asked them, how accurate is this? And most of them said with the design they give it in Oliver and Company, where it's always moving, it's always compact, it's always fast, they said that's pretty on point. Those of you that have been to New York, you can tell me if that's true or not. But I like that just the setting itself conveys this sense of action, this sense of it's never the same way twice. There's always something happening, there's always something to be doing, there's always something to be mindful of. And using setting to convey action like that, I really appreciate, because I do think it's hard to do. When you're making cities especially, I think one of the things most people usually talk about is it's hard to convey either the size or the condensity of it. And I think this is one sense where they do that really, really well. Number two is a tie, because I had to do a tie. I couldn't make up my mind. And that is a tie between Moria and Erebor and the Shire from Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit, and just Middle Earth in general. And I put both of them because I think the settings conveyed differently for both of them. So for, like, say, Erebor and Moria or Khazad-dûm, we get this feeling more from legends and stories and songs than we do actually seeing it. We see Erebor a little bit, we see Khazad-dûm a little bit, but we don't see them in their prime, and we don't see them when, you know, there's all these actions that are happening that we've been told about. But instead, we get this sense of just the vastness of it and the importance of it just from the way people talk about it. When the Fellowship first enters Moria, Gimli sings Song of Durin, which has essentially talking about how Khazad-dûm came to be and then how it fell. And I really love the middle portion because it gives you a sense of what was happening and how grand and vast and full of treasure it was, and how bright and wonderful it was, and how everyone there had like this sense of accomplishment and peace about them. And I really think that's conveyed well with just very few words. Erebor, kind of the same thing. We get more of a sense of what was lost than what we actually see. Like the dwarves' song about the fall of Erebor and them needing to go and reclaim their gold, reclaim their home, is really what gets Bilbo to go with them.
Mountains cold, to dungeons deep and caverns old, we must away ere break of day to find our long forgotten were roaring on the height, the winds were moaning in the night, the fire was red, it flaming spread, the trees like torches blazed with light.
And it's just talking about how there's just this overwhelming sense of loss. And I think that sense of loss is very powerful, and that you don't necessarily even know specifics of what was lost, but you know it was something important and something close and something that needs to be regained. So with Erebor and Moria, it's more what we don't know than what we do know. With the Shire, it's the complete opposite. Tolkien spends so much time really showing us the Shire. The Fellowship of the Ring, the book, does run a little slow, especially at the beginning. I love Lord of the Rings. It's my favorite book series, but even I will say the beginning is kind of slow. But I think it serves a purpose in that you are introduced to all these hobbits and their ways of life, and how essentially peaceful and without conflict and without honestly evil or things like that it is, so that later when they leave the Shire and they leave this sense of safety and security and of knowing what's coming, knowing what to expect, that when you're outside of it, you feel the fear and isolation and uncertainty that they do. And I think Tolkien really nails that by just giving us so many details about the place. But again, that kind of falls into the, is was it best to include so much detail, or would it have been better to include it in the plot? And that's kind of up to you. I think it serves it well because it makes the home real to you. It makes the Shire real to you, so that what's important, why it's so important to the hobbits, is very clear to you. So once you leave it and you see what could possibly be at stake, it becomes more important. And that makes the scoring of the Shire at the end of Return of the King so much more heartbreaking, because you come back and you see this land and you remember how peaceful and in harmony that it was, and you see what it's become, and it breaks your heart. And I think that he does that so well, and I have yet to see it duplicated. Number 1, I went back and forth on this one, and it's one of those, I think, that shifts every time I go through these settings. But I'm gonna go with Feudal Japan from Inuyasha, which is one of my favorite anime. And I really don't know what it is. Like, I really don't know. I think you get to explore so much of it. Like, when we first show up, we're introduced to a simple village. Then we're introduced to what they call Inuyasha's forest. And then we go on and we go to sacred mountains. We go to sacred temples. We go to fishing villages. We just go so many places in this world. And I think that kind of makes it feel lived in. It makes it feel real. You know, it's not so much of, okay, there's this one village, there's a fishing village, there's this place. No, it's, you know, there's this village, then there's this village, then there's this one, then there's a fishing village, then there's a mountain, then there's a temple, then there's a palace, and there's so many places that you go to, and it never feels like it's just expanding to me. Like, it always feels like it was always there, and it's just, you know, it was never relevant before, so we never went here before. But you can definitely picture these people having to go from place to place to place, and I'm still not entirely sure how they do it. I think it's because there's so much little details that are thrown in. They do mention, you know, that this village is to the east of here, the west of there, and they mention, you know, to get here we have to go north, we have to go south. So they give direction to it. But also, I think it's just little things. Like, there's one village where Inuyasha can't enter it because there's people that are selling so much garlic and his senses can't take it. There's also, I believe there was one home where the same thing happened because it was a strong sense of ink, a really strong smell of ink. And I think that that's using senses that we don't usually see used a lot in these kind of stories. And so I appreciate that. I appreciate when it's not just, you know, here's something you hear, here's something you see. There's also, okay, here's something that has a sense of wood and silk. Here's something that has a smell of oils and things like that. And so even though you're not getting those senses, you're still getting them from what the characters are describing, the colors used, that kind of thing. And I really think that gives it a more encompassing feeling. So those were just 15 settings that I think are very important to kind of consider what each of them do. Everybody has their own that I would consider these to be settings that jump out at you. Everybody has their own, and I'd love to hear about yours. What are the settings in fiction that really jump out at you and really stick with you, and why? Leave me a comment below. I'll get to them as soon as I can. If you guys like this kind of content, make sure to give me a comment or subscribe. Make sure to ring the bell so you don't miss when I upload. I try to upload Sundays and Wednesdays, but like I said, schedule's been kind of weird, but definitely one in the beginning of the week, one in the end of the week. I hope you guys enjoyed, and as always, until next time, stay safe, and I hope you have a good one.